Welcome to this free immigration help channel. Today we will talk about asylum. Now, I get a lot of questions, a lot of comments regarding asylum. Probably 70% of all the questions, all the comments is about the asylum process, asylum decisions. So today in this video we'll talk specifically about the decisions. What happens when you are granted asylum? We will briefly cover that because that's the best case scenario. Obviously, you started your asylum application, you were invited for an interview in the asylum office, you went through the interview, and then sometime later you get the letter saying that your asylum request have been approved and you are granted the asylum. Congratulations, that's the best case scenario. Unfortunately, most of the times you do get into some hiccups here and there, whether it's an intent to deny a letter, whether it's a denial. So that's what we will cover in this video. So if you are planning to apply for asylum, you're thinking about it, or maybe you're already in a pending asylum status, this video is for you. Okay, so as always, as you guys can see, I have USCIS.gov open in front of me over here. This is the official website for US Citizenship and Immigration Services. This is where I get all of my information because this is the official source and I highly recommend sticking to it. And the reason why I am bringing this up in this video is because whenever it comes to asylum, there is so much information out there on the internet. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of immigration attorneys, a lot of immigration practitioners that want business. Okay, they want to make money off of you. And there's really nothing wrong when you are paying for a service that helps you get everything done right. But unfortunately, most of the times it's really all about the money, and I don't want you to fall for something that you really don't need, for the information that scares you into making a decision that is unreasonable, that can potentially hurt your case. Okay, so types of affirmative asylum decisions page. I'm gonna put the link in the description below of this video. So let's start with the best case scenario. We're gonna cover it really quickly. Like I said, you filed the asylum case, you were invited for an interview, you went through the interview, and you get the letter that you were granted the asylum. Congratulations, this is the best case scenario. Now you are ready to move on to the next stage. And if you have not been in a pending asylum status for an extended period of time, more than 6 months, you probably still don't have the employment authorization document, you don't have the social security. Now it's time to apply for all of that. You're applying for your EAD, employment authorization document. Once you get that, you can apply for your social security card. You can legally work in the United States. Great. Sometime later, you can apply for a green card, your permanent residence. So everything is going good. Your immigration process is moving along. All right. Now the grant of asylum, if you're granted the asylum, it does not expire. That's it. This is it. Once you're granted, you're granted. So that's great news. But what if something is not very good? If something is not very good, most likely you will get this notice. Now this is not in the order, so I'm going in the order that usually is the case with the immigration services. Most of the times, if there is a problem with your case, and we will talk about what kind of problems there might be, you will get the notice of intent to deny. It takes some time after your interview. Usually it was within a month that if there is a problem after the interview, you get the notice of intent to deny. But now, because there are so many asylum applications pending, there's way too much on the backup. It can take years before you get this notice. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised, because between people's experiences from, let's say, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now, it will be very different. So it's kind of hard to say, if you ask somebody who went through this, they will say, oh yeah, 2 weeks and you will get this. Or about a month and you will get this. About 3 months and you will get this. And it's not the case today, unfortunately. So don't really rely on time. The periods of time in the experience of other people, don't rely too much of them. So what is the notice of intent to deny? it is exactly what it sounds like. It's USCIS telling you that there is a problem with this case and they are intending to deny this case. And all of the notices of intent to deny, they will be very, very personalized. So basically very specific to the case. So there will be a very detailed, it might be 3, 5, 10-page long letter. So it's going to be different from one person to another. And it will explain in detail what exactly is the problem. And most likely it will be referring to the interview. It will be comparing your application and the interview and outlining what are the problems that just don't go along, between the interview and the application. So it can be a few things. I'm gonna bring these things up, for example, so that you're kind of aware if you have a pending asylum case or if you're planning to apply, so that you know what to look out for. One of the main reasons there is an intent to deny or there is a denial is if you, the applicant for asylum, fail to meet qualifications for asylum in the eyes of USCIS. So, for example, you know what the requirements for asylum are. You have to be persecuted in your home country, the country that you came from, the country that you don't want to go and return back to, based on religious beliefs, based on political affiliation, based to belonging to some group, right? All of these different. If you want to learn more about this, I have done separate videos on the asylum, what it is, how it looks, all of that sort of stuff, from the kind of a legal standpoint, if you want to get into detail of that. So if you are failing to fall under any of these categories in the eyes of USCIS, then they're gonna send the intent to deny or deny you, right? This is their decision, whether they want to just deny your case or whether they want to say, you know what, we have an intention to deny your case because we think that you, one of the reasons, failed to qualify for asylum. So we don't think your life is in danger. We don't think that you really belong to a group whose life is in danger. For example, if you claim asylum on religious beliefs and a USCIS officer, they do the research online. Okay, let's see. So this person came, John Doe, okay, always our example, John Doe. He came from this country, whatever, Brazil. He came from Brazil. And he says that because he is Buddhist, it's all examples, guys. Please don't hold me accountable for this. It's all example. John Doe came from Brazil. He claims asylum because he is afraid to go back to Brazil because he is a Buddhist. And he says that in Brazil, Buddhists are persecuted and their lives are in danger. Example. Okay, please don't hold me accountable for this. Right? And then, USCIS officer, they do their research, right? They're, okay, so this guy is claiming this. Let me check. So they do their research. They go, however they do their research, they go online, they go to all of these World Organization reports, UN, UNESCO, UNICEF, Red Cross, I don't know, whatever kind of organizations out there that basically do the reports on other countries. And you will find, and I was talking about these organizations in many of my videos because you use yourself these organizations whenever you submit the evidence, right? So the same research that you do to find that evidence, the same research is done by USCIS officer. So they go and they open up Brazil. Let's see. Okay, Buddhists. Well, there's nothing says here in this report that Buddhists are persecuted. Okay, let me do some more research. So they start, he or she, they start searching more Buddhist persecution in Brazil, and it can be as simple as just going to Google and typing up Buddhist persecution in Brazil. That's it. That's really all you really need. And if they are really persecuted, there's gotta be some information from news media, from whatever, of cases where Buddhists are persecuted in Brazil, and nothing's coming up. Okay, so now USCIS officer, they have a question. It's like, Makes no sense. You're saying that Buddhists are persecuted in Brazil. This guy is doing a research and he finds nothing, absolutely nothing. So it seems like your case is the only case, the only example. So that kind of creates a problem in USCIS officers' mind. Okay, this doesn't really make any sense. So I'm not going to deny this case because all the other evidence looks good. For example, your medical records, your proof that you were persecuted, maybe you were attacked, maybe you were filing police report, maybe you were in the hospital and you have all these records and you submitted with this application. Okay, so there's all this evidence, but he cannot find anything. So you see how there isn't really like a ground for immediate denial, but it doesn't make sense. Something don't make sense. So let's make an intent to deny. That's a rough example of how this whole process works. So they write up the letter of intent to deny, notice of intent to deny. It's going to look like this. It's going to say, okay, you said your story during the interview, blah, blah, blah. You provided all the evidence. But upon our research, our independent research, we didn't find any evidence of any similar other cases that Buddhists are being persecuted on a regular basis in Brazil, like you are saying in your application and like you said during your interview. So we need a little bit further evidence, or we need more something to corroborate that statement. So you get the point. Intent to deny. So besides that, that's reason number one. Failing to qualify basically for the asylum. Other things that can cause this, it can be a little bit of a problem in the application. Maybe you didn't fill out something properly. Maybe you made a mistake. I've seen that happens. Missing appointments. You didn't show up for your interview. You didn't show up for your biometrics. That can cause that. Maybe possibly having some inconsistencies during the interview. So if you said one thing in your application and you said something that is inconsistent with the application during the interview, and there is like a contradiction or something is like doesn't sit right, that can be the case, and that happens. I mean, I've seen people with legitimate cases go through this because they simply did not prepare for the interview. Because, you know, sometimes you file the case and it takes years before they call you for your interview. Now, these days, it takes years before they call you for your interview. So if that's the case with you, make sure to go through your application just to refresh your memory. Because it's understandable that, you know, if something happened to you on June 10, you wrote it June 10, and then 10 years, well, not 10 years, but few years down the road, you call for the interview, you might have forgotten the date and you say, well, it was June 11 or something like this. Silly example, but it happens. So you get the point. So don't make those mistakes. So kind of refresh your memory. Okay, so you got the notice of intent to deny. What do you do now? Obviously, you have to respond. You have to respond to this letter with the evidence that they request, with the explanation, and it has to be very detailed. It has to be very specific. Don't be brief. Don't be unprofessional in this, because I've seen it happen a lot. Because you get the intent to deny and you get agitated, you get emotional, and then you just want to quickly respond like, hey, why are you don't believe me, or what, this and this. Don't be like that. Provide all the evidence that they requested, be professional, and see what happens. Unfortunately, most of the times, when there is an intent to deny, there is a denial. Okay, so if you are denied, if you don't respond to your letter, there's a denial. If you respond and they think that response is not good enough, there's the denial. So what happens? Now we talked about the denial. What happens if you are denied? This is not the end of the road. In fact, your asylum journey, I would say, is just beginning. Okay? Yes, unfortunately. Because with a denial from USCIS, your case goes now to immigration court. And immigration court is a whole separate branch of immigration. It's still immigration, it's still part of the immigration, but it's a whole different, because now it's the judicial branch. It goes from the executive branch, USCIS, to the judicial branch. So now you're going through the justice system, you're dealing with the judge, you're dealing with the court system. Okay, pretty much exactly the same stuff that has been happening with the immigration officer is now happening, but with the judge. You're appearing for all of these hearings, right? There are master hearings, there are individual hearings, there are just brief, quick hearings for address, if you're transferring your case, if you're combining your case. There's basically a lot of stuff happening, all right, with the immigration court. Nothing to be scary about, nothing to worry about. Just be prepared, just kind of know why your case was denied in the first place. Because if your case was denied on kind of for you to establish that qualification for the asylum, most likely the same issue is going to come up with the immigration court. So prepare better, collect that evidence that you were missing for your asylum interview that was for USCIS. On the plus side, whenever you're going through the immigration court, now because you're going to be going into more detail with the immigration judge, most likely if your asylum case really is in a good standing, most likely it will be approved by the immigration judge. And once it is approved by the immigration judge, that's it. It's the same thing. You are granted the asylum. You are good to go. All right. But even if it's denied by the immigration court, it's still not the end of the road. I will make a whole separate video on that. There is an appeal board for the immigration cases that were denied by the immigration court. So it's still not the end of the road. But hopefully now, after your little miscommunication, let's call it that, with USCIS, hopefully now you will be able to get your case stronger and get it approved by the immigration court. So hopefully this video was helpful for you to understand some of the types of decisions, some of the types of the steps in the asylum process. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I will be happy to address them. As you see, these videos that I make, they are response to your comments, to your questions, because I want, if you have a question, I want you to be able to have the answers, to find the answers in the videos on this channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.